My son-in-law thought I was already fading. That was the wordless assumption beneath his voice when I heard him in my daughter's kitchen, speaking into his phone as if he had already survived me. He called me a senile old fossil, said he could not wait to get me declared incompetent, move me into a state facility, and sell the house out from under me before I knew what had happened. He said my daughter was too soft to do what needed to be done, but that was all right. He would handle it. He said he already had the paperwork lined up. He said he had found someone downtown who would notarize anything for $200. He laughed when he said it. What Derek Mitchell did not know was that I had spent 41 years building things that outlasted men like him. He did not know that before I retired, I had built one of the most successful commercial construction firms in the Southeast. He did not know that I started at 19 carrying cinder blocks on job sites outside Charlotte, and ended my working life signing contracts worth more than he would earn in 10 lifetimes. He did not know that the plain house he wanted to sell sat on land I had quietly bought through a holding company 30 years earlier. He did not know that the ground beneath his polished shoes was worth more than his imagination could contain. Most of all, he did not know that I was standing on the back porch with a bag of groceries pressed against my chest, listening to every word through the open kitchen window. I did not move. Men show their truest shape when they believe the person they are betraying has already become harmless. It was late September in Asheville. The mountains were just beginning to turn, green yielding to gold by degrees so patient you could miss it if you were the kind of person who rushed past your own life. I had stopped at the farmer's market that afternoon and bought chicken thighs, a bag of rice, 3 tomatoes, and a bunch of rosemary. I liked to cook for Claire and the children. It made my hands feel useful. It gave the day edges. My name is James Bernett. I am 67 years old. At least, I was 67 when this began. I had been a widower for 3 years. My wife, Evelyn, had been gone long enough for grief to become less theatrical and more permanent. It no longer arrived as a storm. It had become weather. To my daughter and her husband, I was an old man in retreat. Quiet, slower than I used to be, a little forgetful. A retired contractor living off Social Security and a modest pension who had moved into their spare room after his wife died and never entirely found his footing again. That version of me had been carefully designed, because Evelyn had asked me to build it. She taught 4th grade in public schools for 32 years. She understood human weakness better than any lawyer or banker I ever met. She had seen families tear themselves apart over a few acres of land and a dead parent's savings account. She had watched decent people turn mean the moment money entered a room. She had watched grief become arithmetic. The summer before she got sick, she made me promise her something while we sat on the back porch of our house in Charlotte and listened to cicadas grind their way through the heat. "Don't tell Claire how much there is," she said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." I asked her why. "Because dependence is a narcotic," she said. "If she knows there is always money waiting, she will never learn what it costs to stand on her own." I thought she was being hard. She thought I was being naive. In the end, I did what I always did when Evelyn said something in that calm voice that meant she had already outthought me. I agreed. So I sold Burnett Construction quietly. No party. No article in the business journal. No family announcement. I sold the operating company, kept the real estate, and folded most of what I owned into a nest of holding companies managed by my attorney, Frank Castellano. On paper, James Burnett retired modestly. In reality, I still owned commercial and residential properties across 3 states worth roughly $37 million. I never told Claire. At the time, I thought secrecy was discipline. Later, I learned secrecy can also be neglect wearing a respectable face. On the porch that afternoon, I stood still and listened while Derek finished his call. He was talking to a man named Marcus. I did not know then who Marcus Webb was, but I would learn quickly enough. The land alone is worth 3, maybe 400, Derek said. Once I get Claire to sign off, I can list it inside a week. The old man won't know the difference. He doesn't even use a computer. He thinks his pension is all he's got. Then I heard my daughter from somewhere deeper in the house. Derek, I don't feel right about this. He's my father. He forgets things sometimes, but he's not that bad. Her voice was strained and already bending. Derek's dropped at once, softer, flatter. I had heard that tone over the years in fragments through doors and across rooms. It was the voice men use when kindness has stopped working and pressure becomes more efficient. Claire, we are drowning. I owe Marcus $40,000 by the end of the month. $40,000. Your dad is sitting on half an acre in one of the hottest markets in the state, and he does not even know what it's worth. This is not stealing. This is survival. You want the kids changing schools? You want this house gone too? You want me explaining to people why I can't make payroll? There was a silence that told me everything. Then my daughter said, very softly, "Okay, but wherever he goes, it has to be decent. Promise me." The warmth returned to Derek's voice so fast it sounded practiced. "Of course, I promise." He'll be comfortable. He won't even know what he's missing. Something inside me hardened at that. Not broke. Hardened. My daughter had just agreed to let her husband erase me from my own life. Not because she was cruel, because she was weak. And weakness, if you leave it alone long enough, becomes a kind of open gate. I put the grocery bag down on the porch step. Then I slipped my hand into the inside pocket of my jacket and wrapped my fingers around the old Nokia I still carried. Not the smartphone Derek had given me for Christmas, smiling while he explained that it had GPS in case I got lost. I had thanked him for it. Let him set it up. Let him feel clever. I carried his phone where he could see it. I carried mine where he could not. I walked around the side of the house to the woodshed, stepped inside, and closed the door behind me. The air smelled like cut pine, dust, and old gasoline. I dialed Frank Castellano's direct number. He answered on the second ring. "James." "What's wrong?" "I need 3 things done," I said. "Tell me." "First, I want any power of attorney filed in my name flagged immediately and challenged. Second, freeze every asset tied to me. Nothing moves without my direct authorization and the code word Evelyn. Third, I want a full background check on Derek Mitchell tonight. Employment, debts, filings, hidden accounts, anything your people can find. And Frank, I want to know who Marcus Webb is." Frank was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Is this about Claire?" "Yes." "And Derek?" "Yes." When he spoke again, his voice had changed. There are men who become sharper when they are worried. Frank was one of them. "I'll call you before morning." I went back in through the front door, dragging my feet a little, shoulders rounded, wearing the version of myself they were used to ignoring. Derek was in the living room with a football game on. He glanced up long enough to perform politeness. "Hey, Pop." "Claire's making pasta." "Sounds good, son," I said. He looked away before I had finished speaking. That was his habit. He never studied people unless he needed something from them. That night I lay awake in the sagging bed in the spare room and listened to the house settle around me. Pipes ticking, floorboards shifting, wind pressing softly at the siding. Through the wall I could hear Derek and Claire arguing. Her voice came in short bursts, wet with tears. His moved in a pattern I had recognized long before I admitted what it meant. Pressure, anger, reassurance, wounded disappointment, calm. It was the rhythm of a man who keeps another person off balance because balance is the first thing that makes resistance possible. I had watched it for 6 years. I had told myself it was none of my business. Claire was grown. Marriage was complicated. A father could interfere too much. Those were lies. Convenient ones. Evelyn would have heard through all of them in a second. At 6 the next morning, the Nokia buzzed in my hand before the sun was fully up. One message from Frank. Check your safe email. I took my shaving kit into the bathroom, locked the door, and pulled a small tablet from the false bottom of an old tool bag I kept hidden under the sink cabinet. Frank had set up the encrypted account years earlier for property deals I preferred not to discuss over ordinary channels. The report was 19 pages. I read every one. Derek Mitchell had been fired 4 months earlier from his position as a regional sales manager at a medical device company. Terminated for cause. He had inflated expense reports over a 2-year period and pocketed just over $60,000. The company chose not to press charges, mostly to avoid publicity, but his Social Security number had been quietly marked through internal industry channels. He was finished in that field. Claire knew none of it. For 4 months, Derek had put on a suit each morning, kissed his wife, left the house, and spent the day in coffee shops and co-working lobbies pretending he still had a life that no longer existed. That alone would have been enough. It was not the worst part. The deeper pages showed an online gambling addiction. Poker, sports betting, offshore accounts that existed so men could ruin themselves more efficiently. Total debt exposure, $160,000. $40,000 of that owed to a private lender in Charlotte named Marcus Webb. Frank had added a short note beneath the investigator's summary. Webb associated with organized bookmaking operations across the Southeast. Not known for patience. Then the final pages. A home equity line of credit against Claire's house. $80,000. Her signature forged. And a power of attorney in my name filed 3 days earlier with the County Register of Deeds. My forged signature at the bottom. He had already done it. He was not planning fraud. He was standing in the middle of it. I stared at the screen for a long time. My hands stayed steady. 41 years in construction gave me hands that did not shake easily. But something in my chest went cold and hard, as if someone had poured wet concrete into the space around my heart. When I called Frank, he answered immediately. Tell me there's a way to void the power of attorney today. There is. I've already started. The clerk flagged it. A judge will sign the emergency order by noon. And the HELOC. I've got the bank's fraud unit involved. They're freezing movement. Good. Frank hesitated. There's more, he said. Go on. Marcus Webb isn't waiting until the end of the month. 2 men associated with his operation were seen near Claire's house yesterday. They know Derek's broke. They're done being patient. For the first time since hearing Derek in the kitchen, something colder than anger moved through me. Claire. The children. I already put security on the house, Frank said. 2 men in an unmarked car across the street. Round the clock until this is resolved. No one gets near those kids. I closed my eyes for a moment. Thank you. You want police now? No. Then what? I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Old, yes. Grayer than I used to be. But not gone. Not remotely gone. I'm going to give Derek exactly what he thinks he wants, I said. I'm going to let him believe he has won. Then I'm going to let him destroy himself in front of everyone who matters. Frank was quiet for 2 beats. Then he said, You always were the most patient man I knew. Patience, I said, is just anger that learned how to stay useful. For the next 2 days, I played the fool with more care than some men use to play the hero. I asked where my reading glasses were while they sat in my shirt pocket. I repeated a question at dinner and watched Derek glance at Claire with that exhausted little look men use when they want credit for tolerating someone. I shuffled when I walked. I let my shoulders round further. The only honest people in that house were the children. Sophie and James, 8 and 5, climbed onto my lap without calculation. They brought me books, asked me to do the voices. They did not care whether I was rich or poor, sharp or fading. To them, I was simply Grandpa, and there is something brutal about the simplicity with which children love you. They reveal how compromised the rest of us have become. On Saturday morning, Derek left in pressed slacks and a navy shirt for another day of pretending to be employed. I waited until his car was gone. Then I found Claire at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee cooling between her hands. She looked tired in the way women do when they have spent too long translating a man's failures into their own guilt. "Honey," I said, letting some uncertainty into my voice, "I found something in your mother's papers." She looked up at once. "What is it?" "It seems Evelyn had a life insurance policy from her teaching days. Small enough I forgot about it. It matured." I paused, letting a little bewilderment move across my face. "There's a check for $60,000. Claire's cup hit the table harder than she meant it to. "Dad, 60,000? I nodded. "I was going to put it in savings, but I can see how stressed you two are. I may be old, Claire. I'm not blind. I want you to have it." She broke down at once. Not quiet tears. Full-body sobs from a person who had been holding herself together by force for too long. She came around the table and held me so hard I could feel her grief in my ribs. "You don't know what this means," she said into my shoulder. "This could save us." I held her and looked past her at the sun on the backyard fence. I was trying to save her. Just not in the way she imagined. She called Derek before I had even sat down again. I could hear his voice through the phone, bright and greedy with relief. He came home less than an hour later carrying flowers for Claire and a bottle of bourbon for me. Blanton's Single Barrel. A man drowning in debt does not buy a bottle like that unless he thinks the flood has passed. "Jane's," he said, gripping my shoulders with both hands, eyes shining with counterfeit gratitude. "You are a miracle, an absolute miracle." I smiled mildly. "Am I? You have no idea. This gives us room, real room. I've got an investment lined up, strong returns. 60 turns into 200 inside 6 months. I let him finish. Then I said, "That sounds wonderful, son, but I do have one condition." His smile shifted. "A condition?" "Tomorrow night," I said. "I want to take you and Claire out for a real dinner. A celebration. My treat." He relaxed a little. "Sure, of course. I was thinking of Harlow's. The steakhouse downtown. The one in the old bank building." That made him blink. Harlow's was the kind of place politicians, surgeons, and developers went to be seen spending money as casually as other people breathed. "Jane's," he said carefully. "That place is pretty expensive." "I have $60,000, I said. "I think I can survive a steak." Claire laughed weakly from the doorway. Derek joined in a second later, but I could see calculation already moving behind his eyes. Then I gave him what he was really hungry for. "There's something else I wanted to tell you both," I said. "About the house. About some old investments Evelyn and I made years ago. I thought tomorrow night might be the right time." That changed him completely. The caution left first. Then greed filled the space it had occupied. He was no longer hearing $60,000. He was hearing more, maybe much more. Enough to solve everything. Enough to save himself. Men like Derek always mistake appetite for destiny. "Tomorrow night," he said, smiling wide now. "Harlow's it is." At midnight I called Frank. "It's set," he said. "Private dining room, booked under my firm." "Will Hendricks be there?" "Yes." Detective Sarah Hendricks was Buncombe County Financial Crimes. Frank had brought her in quietly once the forged documents were verified. She had been building a case around Marcus Webb's operation for nearly 2 years. Derek, without realizing it, had stumbled into the center of something larger than his own small corruption. Sunday evening, I put on the one good suit I still kept pressed. Charcoal wool bought for Evelyn's funeral. Strange how a man can own millions and still feel that the most expensive thing in his closet is the suit he buried his wife in. I took a cab to Harlow's alone. I told Claire and Derek I wanted to arrive early to make sure everything was perfect. The restaurant occupied a converted bank building from the 1920s. Marble floors, brass trim, tall ceilings built for another era's idea of power. The maitre d' looked at me with polite indifference until I said, "Castellano." Then his posture changed immediately. "Right this way, Mr. Burnett." He led me down a corridor lined with black and white photographs of old Asheville and stopped at a heavy steel door. The private room had been built inside the original bank vault. 2-foot walls of reinforced concrete and steel, a white tablecloth, candles, fresh flowers. It looked like a celebration. Frank was already there. So was Detective Hendricks. She was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed, self-contained, with the kind of stillness that comes from years of watching guilty people think motion is the same as escape. We shook hands. "Mr. Burnett," she said, "your son-in-law has been more helpful than he knows." "My daughter is not part of this," I said immediately. Hendricks held my gaze. "Based on what we have, Claire Mitchell is not a target. But she will need to cooperate." "She will," I said. "After tonight, she won't have much choice." At 8 exactly, the door opened. Derek came in first, Claire half a step behind him, as if the architecture of their marriage could be measured in inches. He was wearing a new blazer I had never seen before. On his wrist was a watch that caught the candlelight every time he moved. Also new, bought on credit he did not have because he believed my money was already his. Claire wore a simple blue dress, beautiful in the tired way some women become when they have spent too many years apologizing for the man beside them. "Dad," she said, hugging me, "this place is incredible." Then she saw Frank, then Detective Hendricks, then the 2 plainclothes officers seated at the bar outside the vault room. Her face changed. Derek's changed faster. "Friends of mine," I said. "Please sit." Derek did not sit at first. He gripped the back of his chair so hard his knuckles turned pale. I don't understand, James. You said this was a family dinner. It is, I said. Sit down, Derek. Something in my voice reached him at last. Not volume, not anger, authority. The kind he had always assumed was gone. He sat. Frank opened a leather folder and slid one document across the table until it stopped beside Derek's water glass. That, Frank said, is a power of attorney filed 3 days ago with the County Register of Deeds. It bears the signature of James Bernett. Mr. Bernett did not sign it. It is a forgery. The color left Derek's face so quickly it was almost elegant. He turned to me. James, I can explain. Frank cut him off by laying down a second document. This is a home equity line of credit in the amount of $80,000 taken out against the property at Ridgewood Lane. It bears Claire Mitchell's signature. Claire Mitchell did not sign it. Another forgery. Claire turned toward Derek so sharply her chair legs scraped the floor. What? She said. Derek, what is he talking about? What line of credit? He did not look at her. His eyes were fixed on me, his face changing every second. Confusion, anger, calculation, fear. Frank placed a third folder on the table. This is your employment termination record from MedVantage Incorporated, he said. Dismissed for cause 4 months ago after embezzling approximately $60,000 through falsified expenses. Claire stared at him as if the shape of his face had changed. You were fired. You told me you got promoted. I was going to fix it, Derek snapped. I had a plan. Your plan, Frank said, was to steal Mr. Burnett's property, forge legal documents, and liquidate his home to cover gambling debts totaling $160,000 owed to a criminal lending operation run by a man named Marcus Webb. That name hit Derek like a blow. Every trace of color left him. How do you know that name? He whispered. Detective Hendricks answered. Because, Mr. Webb's organization is the subject of an active federal investigation, Mr. Mitchell, and your financial records have helped us tie several of his associates to fraudulent lending and extortion schemes. Derek stood so quickly his chair skidded backward. No, this is insane. You can't do this. Then he pointed at me, hand shaking. He's the one lying. He told me he had $60,000. He doesn't have that money. He's a retired contractor living on Social Security. I let the accusation hang in the air for a moment. Then I lifted my water glass, took one slow sip, and set it down. You're half right, I said. The softness I had worn for months was gone now. So was the shuffle, the confusion, the smallness. I do not have $60,000. Wild relief flashed across his face. Then I said, I have 37 million. The vault went still. Not dramatic stillness. Real stillness. The kind that comes when a room hears reality shift all at once. Claire stopped breathing for a second. Frank remained motionless. Detective Hendricks watched Derek's face with professional attention. Derek simply stared at me. 37 million did not fit inside the story he had told himself about who I was. The old man in the spare room, the pension check, the sagging mattress, the soft target. What did you say? He asked. I said I am worth $37 million. I sold Burnett Construction 12 years ago and invested every cent. I own commercial properties in Charlotte, Raleigh, and Greenville through holding companies managed by Mr. Castellano. The house you plan to steal from me sits on land I purchased through an LLC in 1994. It is worth considerably more than the number you quoted to Marcus on the phone. Then I stood and walked around the table until I was directly in front of him. You called me a senile old fossil, I said. You forged my signature. You stole against my daughter's name. You lied to her every day for 4 months. You put my grandchildren in a house being watched by criminals. And you did all of it because you thought I was too old and too stupid to stop you. I leaned close enough that he could hear the last part without effort. Derek, I built hospitals. I poured foundations that will still be standing long after you are forgotten. You thought you could break me with forged paper and a bottle of bourbon. His mouth opened and closed, but nothing useful came out. Detective Hendricks stood. Derek Mitchell, you are under arrest for 2 counts of felony forgery, 1 count of identity theft, and 1 count of grand larceny connected to the fraudulent home equity line of credit. You have the right to remain silent. The 2 plainclothes officers entered the room. Derek did not fight. He did not shout. He simply seemed to collapse inward, the swagger leaking out of him so quickly there was nothing left but a frightened, ordinary man in an expensive blazer he could not afford. As they cuffed him, he turned to Claire one last time. Baby, please, tell them I was doing it for us. Tell them I was trying to save our family. For the first time in 6 years, I saw something in my daughter's face that was not fear, not submission, not the exhausted confusion of a woman forever trying to keep the peace with a man who fed on imbalance. It was clarity. You were trying to save yourself, she said. Her voice was quiet, but it did not tremble. You were always trying to save yourself. I just couldn't see it. They took him out through the kitchen exit to spare the main dining room. A few moments later, I heard the back door close. Then an engine. Then nothing. Claire sat down slowly. She did not faint. She did not scream. She just stared at the untouched plates and the candles flickering in the vault. After a long silence, she looked at me. Dad, she said, 37 million. You let me struggle. You watched me drown. You watched him control me, and you could have stopped it the whole time. Why? I sat down across from her. I did not reach for her hand. She did not need comfort yet. She needed truth. Because your mother asked me to, I said. Evelyn believed that if you knew about the money, it would ruin you. She had seen what inheritance does to families. She was terrified of it. And I agreed with her. We told ourselves that hiding it would make you strong, that it would make you self-reliant, that it would protect you. I paused. The next sentence was the hardest one I had said that night. We were wrong. We did not protect you. We made you so desperate for stability that you married the first man who promised it. We made you so hungry for safety that you could not recognize the kind of man who sells it before he steals it back. Our silence did not make you strong. It made you a target. She cried again then, but quietly. Not the theatrical sobbing from the kitchen. These were the tears that come from understanding. What happens now? She asked. Now we clean up what he broke, then we rebuild, but not the way you think. Frank handed me a folder. I opened it and placed it between us. This is the Evelyn Bernett Trust, I said. It is funded by a portion of my holdings. Your name is attached to it, but you do not control it. You cannot sell the assets. You cannot borrow against them. Frank administers it. She looked down, then back up. The trust gives you 2 things. First, the house on Ridgewood Lane. You and the children can live there as long as you like, rent-free. But it is not yours to sell. It is a home, not leverage. Second, it provides a monthly allowance. $2,500. Enough for groceries, utilities, school supplies, ordinary life. She stared at me. 2,500. Dad, that's not more than your mother and I lived on for the first 15 years of our marriage, I said. And we built a good life. I have 2 children. Yes, I said. And you need a job. She blinked at me as if I had slapped her. A job? You have a degree in business administration that I paid for. You have a perfectly functional mind. You have spent 6 years as a passenger in your own life. That ends now. Fear moved through her face. Then something else. A small, hard edge, the first true sign of spine I had seen in her in years. A job doing what? I'm starting a foundation, I said. The Bernett Family Foundation. It will help elderly victims of financial fraud. People whose children steal their checks. People whose caretakers drain their accounts. People whose signatures are forged and whose homes are leveraged because nobody thinks they can fight back. She listened differently then. No longer like a daughter arguing with a father, like a woman hearing a door open. I need someone to run intake, I said. Someone to answer the phone when those people call. Someone to sit with them, listen, help them tell the truth clearly enough for the law to hear it. I need someone who knows what it feels like to be manipulated by a person you love. Someone who knows the cost of weakness, because that person will never let another victim feel foolish and alone. I held her gaze. The salary is $32,000 a year. The hours are long. You will start at the bottom. You will earn every dollar, and you will be home in time to cook dinner for Sophie and James every night. Her lower lip trembled, but she did not look away. I'm not giving you my wealth, Claire. I'm giving you a chance to build a life that belongs to you. The candles burned low while she sat with that. Finally, she said, "Okay." Her voice cracked, but it held. "I'll take the job." "Good," I said. "You start Monday." The trial lasted 3 weeks. Derek's parents scraped together money from their retirement fund to hire a defense attorney, which felt fitting in a bitter way. One more generation paying for a man who had spent his life treating help as entitlement. The attorney tried everything: entrapment, manipulation, elder confusion. At one point, he asked me on the stand if I had deceived my own son-in-law when I mentioned the imaginary insurance policy. I looked at the jury before I answered. 12 working people. Ordinary faces. The kind that understood what it means to build something with your hands and then watch someone try to take it with a pen. I told my son-in-law my late wife had a life insurance policy, I said. That was false. What is true is that before I said those words, he had already forged my signature, stolen $80,000 against my daughter's name, and begun the process of having me declared incompetent so he could seize my home. I did not entrap him. I gave him an opportunity to reveal exactly who he already was. The rope was there. He chose the knot. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge was a woman in her 60s, with the kind of face that did not waste sympathy where it was not earned. She reminded me of Evelyn in the most painful possible way. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, "you are a predator who targeted the elderly and exploited your own family. This court has no sympathy for you." She gave him 12 years. I watched them take him away and felt nothing theatrical. No triumph, no sorrow. Just the clean, cold sensation of a job completed and a foundation properly set. Claire testified against him. It was the hardest thing she had ever done, and the bravest. She sat in that witness chair and told the truth about everything. The forged signatures, the fake job, the gambling, the fear. She did not cry. When the defense attorney tried to shake her, she looked him in the eye and said, "I spent 6 years being afraid of a man who lied to me every day. I am done being afraid." I had never been more proud of her in my life. I did not tell her that then. Not yet. Pride, like trust, means more when it is earned all the way through. 2 years passed. I turned 69. I no longer slept in a spare bedroom pretending to disappear. I sat in a modest office on the 3rd floor of a renovated building on Patton Avenue in downtown Asheville. Frosted glass on the door. Dark wood desk. Nothing fancy. The sign outside read, "Bernett Family Foundation." Through the glass partition I could see 6 desks. Each one staffed by a person who knew exactly what it meant to have trust broken by someone they loved. At the desk closest to my office sat Claire. White blouse, dark slacks, hair pulled back, a yellow legal pad beside the phone. Her voice calm in the way voices become calm only after they have survived panic and no longer fear it. "Yes, ma'am," I heard her say one morning. "We're going to help you. Can you tell me when you first noticed the withdrawals?" "All right. And your son? Does he have access to your account?" She was good at the work because she had lived its shape. She knew the shame, the denial, the precise moment a victim stops protecting the person hurting them and finally begins to tell the truth. She recognized that moment because she remembered her own. In 2 years, the foundation recovered more than $4 million for elderly fraud victims across western North Carolina. We helped bring 31 cases to prosecution. We worked with banks to create stronger safeguards for seniors. Frank handled the legal side. I funded it. Claire ran day-to-day operations. She got a raise after the first year, then another. She earned everyone. One Thursday afternoon, she knocked on my office door with a file in her hand. "The Henderson case," she said. "The son returned all of it. $68,000. His attorney wants to settle before trial." "Good," I said. "Make sure Mrs. Henderson gets every cent back, plus legal fees." Claire smiled. "Anything else?" "Yes. Tell her son he is lucky his mother is more forgiving than I am." That made her laugh. A real laugh. Not the nervous, apologetic one she used to use as armor. This one belonged to her. She lingered in the doorway. "Dad, Sophie's school play is Friday. She's the narrator. She wanted me to ask if you'd come." I looked at my daughter, the woman who had to lose almost everything before she learned how to stand. The woman who told the truth in open court, even when that truth exposed her own blindness. The woman who arrived at 7 every morning, worked until 5, then went home to help her children with homework and dinner and the ordinary labor of a life built honestly. "I'll be in the front row," I said. She nodded, then stopped before leaving. "Dad," she said quietly, "I never said thank you. Not for the trust, not for the foundation, not for not giving up on me. I know I didn't deserve it." I looked at her for a long moment. "You're my daughter, Claire. You will always deserve a chance. You just had to learn that chances are not the same thing as rescue." She stood there with tears in her eyes, but she smiled anyway. When she left, I sat alone for a while. On my desk was a framed photograph of Evelyn. She was laughing in it, standing in the yard of our first house in Charlotte, the tiny 2-bedroom place where we started with a second-hand sofa, thin savings, and the sort of confidence only young people and fools possess. I picked up the frame and looked at her face. I thought about the promise she made me keep. I thought about how close that promise came to ruining our daughter. And I thought about how breaking it, finally, in the right way and at the right time, might have been the only thing that saved her. "You were right about the money, Evelyn," I said softly. "But you were wrong about the secret. The secret didn't protect her. The truth did." I set the photograph down and drank my coffee, though it had gone cold. Outside my office window, the Blue Ridge Mountains were gold and crimson in the autumn light. The same mountains I had looked at for 30 years. The same mountains that did not care whether a man was rich or poor, strong or weak, feared or forgotten. They remained what they were, patient, permanent, waiting for the rest of us to find our footing. There is a lesson in all of this, and it cuts both ways. If you are the kind of person who looks at an old man and sees a burden, a mark, an easy target, understand something. You do not know what that man has built. You do not know what he has survived. You do not know what he is capable of when you force him to remember. And by the time you learn, it may already be too late. But if you are a parent like me, if you ever convinced yourself that hiding your strength would somehow make your children stronger, then understand this too. Secrecy is not protection. It leaves the people you love standing in the dark, reaching for the first hand that offers light, even when that light belongs to a fire that will burn their whole world down. Money is not the greatest gift you can give your children. Protection is not either. The real gift is truth. And the courage to face it before someone cruel teaches the lesson for you.